Welcome back to the Second Revival, where today we have got another Nintendo Switch here. Now this one came with a dock, so the Switch is faulty. I believe the dock is okay. It's in alright condition. It's missing the back cover, but I think that's a major issue for most people. So we'll put this one off to the side and we'll just take a look at the Switch here. It's got some fingerprints on it. Overall, a couple of scuffs and stuff, but fairly decent overall. No game and no memory card here, but overall condition isn't too bad really. So we'll do what we do with all Nintendo Switches. We'll start just by looking at the port. Now I've actually got a new toy here. I have a new scope, so hopefully this should be a bit clearer. So if we jump over to the microscope. Okay, and here we are over at the scope. So hopefully this is a lot clearer than the old one. It looks over here. It's got a much bigger screen here as well, which is good, which helps me out. And if we take a look at the port, overall it looks pretty good in all fairness. I can't see anything major on this. Looks pretty alright. So I feel comfortable sticking the ammeter into this. So we'll pull the scope back round and we'll get our USB ammeter and we'll see what kind of draw we're getting from this. The ammeter screen up for you, that's just there. So what we're hoping to see is 15 volts and then probably about 400 milliamps to show it's charging. So we plug this in, we get 15 volts and it drops down to 0.098. Now I don't think I've ever seen this. If we do the other way, let's switch this around, what do we get? Exactly the same thing. So it looks like it tries to turn on but then can't. So we're getting the 15 volts, so it's not the M92. But let's just try something here. Let's try and see if we can get a display from this and work out whether the display's not there, because that could be that lower amperage just because maybe it's fully charged. So I'll plug this in and let's see whether we get anything on the HDMI. So I don't think we're getting anything there on the HDMI, so I think it's not turning on. So let's get this apart and see what we get. So I'll fast forward through all of this and then once we're in, we'll take a look. Okay, so I've just got the back plate off here, and the first thing I want to test is just how much voltage is in the battery, because there's every chance the battery's just really low and that's why it was showing such a low draw. But I don't know whether this has been gone into before. I can't tell if this is the original factory thermal paste, because very certain the factory stuff is sort of like a pinkish nature, whereas this one doesn't, and just some of the screws felt a bit easy to get off, which makes me think that maybe someone's already been in this knowing it was not repairable and then moved it on. But let's just check what we've got in the battery voltage wise. Okay, 2.7, that is very low. So I think what we will do then is just plug this back to the charger and leave it for a while and see whether it does anything different, if it goes up, because I say it could just be because it's really low. So let's plug this in and then we get that really low sort of like 100 then drop down, which I say sort of feels to me like it's sort of semi turning on. Let's just check whether that voltage is going up in the battery. Okay, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8. Because this is a 3.7 volt battery, so at sort of like full we should see it at 4.2 volts basically. So 2.8 is very low. So yeah, we'll just leave this to charge for a bit and see if it does anything. Okay, so I've just left it for a little while and it's now bumped up to 0.1 amp. So it's going up. So just going to continue to leave this for a bit longer and see if it does anything else, see if it goes up any higher. So we were stuck originally at 0.09, it's now gone up to 0.19. So yeah, we'll pause again and come back if it goes up any higher. If not, we'll do some more digging Okay, so we didn't get any change to that. That stayed as it was. So we'll continue tearing this down a bit more. But something tells me that we might have a CPU failure on this. In all fairness, I will get down to M92, and then what we can do, actually we can do it from here, is this isn't like the switch lights where it's on the other side of the board. We can actually check this from this side. So we bring the scope round and we just come over here. Here is M92 T36. We just get this in focus. There it is. And basically there is a couple of caps around this, and one of them is connected directly to the APU, which if that is shorted, this is game over. So let's start by testing that. So we'll put our probes here, one on ground, one on the caps, and we're just in continuity mode, which is the mode that beeps when we get a complete circuit. So if we go just here, and this is the cap in question, I believe, and that is positive. So you see we get a beep on the outside but not on the inside. So we'll just go around and test the rest of these. Okay, that is positive there. So M92 is not shorted. So it'd be interesting to see what this is then. Okay, so I've got the battery unplugged. Let's see what this does if we try and charge it with the battery unplugged. Okay, to me that looks like just a normal boot. So I think I'm just going to plug the battery in and just leave it for a bit longer. Okay, that's gone up to, that did start at 0.4, which is a normal charge in all fairness. It's dropped back down. I suppose what we can do is let's see if the thermal camera can show us anything. Okay, so here we have the thermal camera, and we can see currently there is some heat being generated just down here. And this is the BQ chip, which would make sense because I believe this is also sort of part of the battery management. So I'm not surprised that's getting warm. That probably is about normal in all fairness. But we don't see any sort of major heat spots anywhere else, which is kind of positive. So it could be that we actually just have a faulty BQ chip, and that might actually be our problem. But we've just gone up to 400 milliamps there. So let's go back to the normal camera and see whether do we have anything on the screen. So at this point, this is like a standard charge, so it's charging normally, but we have nothing on the screen. At this point we would usually expect to see a battery charging symbol here, so there's every chance that it could be just a display issue with this switch. What if we try and like turn the console on, does that change? No, and I don't think we have a backlight on this either. I can't see one. So this could just be not an issue with the board, but an issue with the display or the backlight. Doesn't seem to respond when I try and turn it on though. Okay, so we've just reached 0.8 or 0.7-ish there, which is, as far as I'm aware, fully the console has like booted. So the console's working fine. Aha, actually, now that I say that, I can see if I can try and get a light on this. I can see on the screen the home button there. If I turn the volume up, we can hear. So I can actually see an image on here, so I think this is a backlight problem. Try and see if we can get this in a way where maybe you guys can see. Okay, you can sort of see in the light there, you can see the home button. So we have a screen, but I think the digitizer might also not be working because I'm tapping the screen, which would normally unlock it, and I'm not getting anything at all. So I think that's at least pinpointed down to where we're looking for our issues. Now the backlight connector is here, as well as the display, and I think actually now that I can see that, I think there is some corrosion around that area. So let's get this unplugged. Oh, and we just heard the sound there of the battery where I unplugged it saying it's got a low battery. So let's just get this unplugged. So this has definitely suffered liquid damage because we can see just down here. Before I get this any further up, let's pull this under the scope. And I suppose this is evidence as to how important a visual inspection can be. So we're just under the scope here, and I think you can see a bit clearer there, just underneath that cable there. So that cable on the right is the backlight connector, and you can see all of that sort of blueness there. That is corrosion. So we'll get this board out, and possibly might be able to we might be able to get away with just a bit of a cleanup. So let's get this board out and have a look. Okay, so we're all apart, and I'm just going to show you a few things as to why a visual inspection kind of be the most important thing you do. So had I looked around this board before I did anything, I probably would have spotted the corrosion, and we probably could have pinpointed what the error is a bit earlier. But if we have a look, this is just behind the game card reader here, and we can see there is a bunch of corrosion around here as well. So we can kind of presume the liquid has come in through the game card reader. And then if we bring just the board underneath here as well, we can have a look, and few kind of areas to kind of point out is, first one is obviously the area we looked at just down here, which is the backlight connector. We can see it all there, but then if we come up nearer to the game card reader, we can also see around here, which this is potentially the fan, or this might be the, I think this might be the fan here. Please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But we can see that probably explains why certain things aren't working. So we'll start just by giving it all a clean up and see how it looks after that. And then we can make a decision on what we're going to do with it afterwards. So for this, I'm just going to get a toothbrush and some IPA and just give it a good clean. Come down to here. So this corrosion could be enough to have just caused it to stop working, because if any of those capacitors were then sort of like corroded on either side, that could have been conductive and caused it to come through to ground and sort of stop the voltage there. So we'll start just by giving it a clean, and then we'll see how it fares after a nice good clean. So I'm going to come in with just a slightly finer brush, just because I'm hoping this might be able to get in some of the smaller areas a bit better. And whilst we're here, we'll just take a look around some of the rest of the board and see if we can see any other spots. To be honest, I think we've caught this at a good time. It doesn't look like it's got too deep into it or caused too much problem. But we'll just continue to work ourselves around the board. And all that looks absolutely fine. So let's take a slightly closer look at these connectors. Yeah, it looks like there's still a tiny amount of corrosion between those components. So let's come in and see if we can get very much in between those. I might come in with my toothbrush again because it's a bit firmer. We'll just go alongside the direction of the components. So I think what we'll do then is, I think maybe we'll just get this back in the chassis again and give it a test. Whilst we're here, we'll just clean up some of these spots inside the chassis as well. Okay. We'll get that under the scope because that does look a little worse for wear. So let's see how it looks. Okay, here's that backlight connector. Let's see how that looks. Okay, there is 3 contacts on there, but there's 4 on the end, but one of them doesn't look like it goes anywhere, so we'll see whether maybe we can just try clean this up as well, because that looks like there's a bit of corrosion on there, which is not going to help. So let's get this. And then here is the Joy-Con rail as well, and that's got a bunch of corrosion on it too. Pull that a bit more in the middle for me. I think we've probably caught that just at the right time there. Okay, that might have actually started to eat through that track in all fairness, so this one might be too far gone. Can't tell if that's on the surface or if it's gone through. So what I suppose we'll do is if we get our meter into continuity and see whether we have continuity between the end of that pad and the front of the pad. So if we come in and go from... Okay, that is coming through, so... Could just be surface level there. Okay, so that one does just look like it's surface level. Let's come back and take a look at this one. Okay, that's cleaned up quite nicely actually. That seems to be working, so yeah, let's get this just back in the chassis and see whether it works now. Okay, so I think we're together enough to test this out now then. So let's just get this. We'll just get the speaker in here because it's poking around. I don't want it to short against anything. I don't think it will, but rather be safe than sorry. So we'll just get this plugged in. We'll get our battery plugged in. And then let's get our charger and plug this in and see what happens. So straight to 400. We get our charging symbol and the boot. There it is. And then let's just hope, we'll see whether we get our digitizer back as well, because that wasn't working earlier. Okay. Okay, so we still don't have the digitizer. That's interesting. Might need to just double check which one is the digitizer cable. We don't have it anywhere, which makes me think it's not necessarily like a screen issue. I think that strikes me like the digitizer's just not working properly there, because otherwise if it was the screen, I think we'd have kind of sections where it worked and sections where it doesn't work. Saying that, actually I think I may spot some of our issue. If this cable up the top here is the digitizer, what do we have just under this chip here? You can see a bunch more corrosion just here. So if that chip has something to do with the digitizer, which I think this cable here might be the digitizer cable, might explain why. So let's just get this back unplugged, give that area a clean up and see whether we have anything different. Now the difficulty we're going to have is this is a BGA chip here, and if the corrosion has got underneath it and that's where the problem is, we'll probably need to replace this chip. So hopefully I've got some donors knocking around. I might be able to take the chip off it, or we might be able to get away with just taking it off, cleaning it up and then reballing it and placing it back down. It might not actually need to be straight up like fully replaced. Okay, that's cleaned up. Let's just see how that looks under the scope. Okay, there's still a bit around that cap there. So let's get our toothbrush back again, wherever I've put that, just here. And let's try with the toothbrush, which is just a bit more kind of aggressive, just a slightly stronger bristle. And we'll get our finer brush again and then just get slightly into those cracks. And then hopefully try and force a load of this underneath the chip. I'm going to try and flood it underneath as well, and hope we're just trying to dissolve it and wash it out. Also, drop down in the comments if anyone's seen any of the previous videos how much of a difference this new scope has made, because it wasn't sort of that much more expensive than my old one, but it's sort of mad how much better it seems to be. And then let's see whether that's made any difference. And then hopefully we've still got our display. Yep, there it is. I was slightly worried for a second there. It took a bit longer to come on. And the other thing that did stand out is this boot screen did seem like it took a little bit of time to go. And normally I think if the boot screen stays a bit longer than it normally should, and this does feel like it's on there for a little while, it's an issue with the game card reader. And no, we still don't have anything there. So let me just grab some Joy-Cons and see whether we can get anything out of this. Okay, so I've got a pair of Joy-Cons. Hopefully these work. I don't fully know, but we'll see. So we can plug those in. Okay, so that does work. So the right one and the left one are both paired there. So if we go to system settings and we just test the touchscreen, see whether we get anything at all. No, so there's not a single section of the touchscreen that works. Let me try and see if I can get this in the light where you can see a bit better. There you go. Nothing there. So there's definitely a problem with that there. So what I need to do then, I guess, is see if I can find a bit more information about, double check whether that is the digitizer cable there, and then if it is, see whether maybe the actual cable itself needs a bit of a cleanup, and we'll try that. But let me just do a bit of testing into whether that is actually the correct cable to begin with, and then we'll work it out after that. Okay, yeah, so that cable there is definitely the digitizer. So let's just get the battery unplugged again, and then just check that cable itself, because we know there was some corrosion around the area, so there could be something on the actual cable. Okay, it doesn't look like it. Let's just bring the scope around, see if we can see a bit closer. But there's every chance there's still some more corrosion underneath that chip there. Here we are underneath this. We'll try and see if we can maybe add just a touch more light. See if that makes it any better. So there is a little bit of something going on just up the top here. So we can certainly try cleaning the pins and stuff, but if we look at the cable itself, the cable to the digitizer looks perfect. But then if we think if the water got in underneath here into where the game slot is, there's every chance that it's sort of broken the digitizer from behind. But if I was to guess where the issue was, it's either this actual connector here, or still there might be a problem with this chip. So if we can try and get a better angle, see whether we can see underneath it, because it looks alright on that side. Looks alright on that side too. We can take a look further inside this as well and see whether there's anything inside the game card reader, because like I say, it does feel like that boot symbol stayed there for a while, which is usually, oh, there we go. So we can definitely confirm this is where it got in, because you can see all of the corrosion on there. To be honest, the inside of the connector looks alright. I'll give this a clean up. So that boot hanging is usually indicative of a problem with the game card reader. So I think there's a strong chance that even if we can get the digitizer working, there is a chance that the actual game card reader itself isn't going to work. But that's fine, because we can just swap that out, and then it makes it probably a bit easier if it's all part of the same thing. We just swap the game card reader out and fix both issues in one. But in all fairness, it'd be nice to get it working and say that we can 100% say we know what the problem was and that we fixed the problem. If we have to just swap it, it's not the end of the world. Inside the game card reader looks alright in there as well, actually. Like it just sort of settled on the back of it all. Let's get this plug back in and see whether that's made any difference now. See whether that's made any difference. So battery symbol's there again. You get the boot. And let's see if this goes any quicker or whether it still hangs on there. Okay, that felt like it went a bit quicker. But we still don't have a touchscreen. So let me try and see if I can just swap out that game card reader and see if that makes any difference at all. Okay, so here is just a spare game card reader. I think they're the same. They look identical. One has a sticker on it, the other one doesn't, but I feel like the same. They've got slightly different revision numbers and stuff on them, but I don't imagine it's going to make too much of a difference. So we'll put the liquid damage one there and we'll just try plug this one in. And charge a symbol. And the boot, let's see whether this goes quite quickly again. Okay, that did go quite quickly. But no, still no digitizer there. So there's every chance the actual chassis itself is the problem. So I think we might need to swap this out. But I'll do a little bit more digging and a little bit more research, see whether maybe I'm just looking in the wrong place here, and see whether that's not actually the digitizer at all, or whether that's just the LCD or something. So once I've done a bit more research, I'll come back and we'll try some other bits. Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks and I've been doing a bit of research in the meantime. So I think I've got to the point where I'm fairly certain that the issue is the game card reader and not the digitizer itself. So I tried a bit of swapping bits apart, and you saw before I tried this other game card reader with it and it didn't work. I mentioned that it did look a bit different, and from what I can see online is that there's actually sort of like 3 different game card readers that they put in the different revisions of the switch here, which we can kind of see on the back if we look at these little lines here and this gap here. So I believe this is a V2 and this is a V1, or maybe the other way around. And the same sort of applies for the digitizers themselves, which can sort of be seen where there's no writing on here, but then if we look at the chassis that I did try it in, there's some writing on the back of the digitizer cable there. And from what I understand is they're not all directly compatible with each other, which is sort of why I had the issue of when I tried swapping it out with the other card reader, it didn't work. But what I did try off camera is move the whole board from the broken switch into this sort of like donor chassis here, and then used the card reader that came with the donor chassis, and it did work. Now the only problem I've got with that is this chassis sort of broken, so I couldn't just move it all over. So what I've done is I bought a few different parts, one of which being a new game card reader. Now this one I believe is the 3rd type that they made that works with both types of boards, the V1 and V2, and it's got a slightly different shaped digitizer chip on it, which if this works in this chassis pretty much kind of concludes that the issue is with the game card reader, which would make sense because when we looked at it, this had corrosion all over it, and if this works, we'll probably try take this chip off and have a look and see if we can see anything underneath it. So I'll just get all this stuff out of the way and clear a bit of space, and we'll use this sort of new card reader and give this a go then, and hopefully this works. Okay, so that's all attached, so let's get our cable and see whether this works now. We'll just plug the battery back in. Here we still have our battery symbol, that's good. Screen turns on, turn on quite quickly, and there we have it. Cool, so the screen's working with the new card reader. So that pretty much concludes that we know that the issue does sit solely with the card reader and not the digitizer itself, because I've not swapped that out. So I'm going to let this charge up for a bit, and whilst that's charging, I think we'll just take a look at this card reader then. I think what we might try and do is get the actual chip off and see if we can see underneath it, because it might be that there's still some corrosion under there. Okay, so we'll just move over to the microscope and we can take a look at this. So I don't think I can see anything sort of underneath it at this angle. So it all looks okay, but what we'll try and do then is we'll try and see if we can get this chip off and have a look. So it might be that there's corrosion underneath it, or it might be that the chip itself is just faulty. So what we'll do is I'll try and get some tape and stuff over the plastic and bits here, and then we'll just try and see if we can lift this off. Okay, so I think we're all set up here. I'm going to come in from the left-hand side here to try and angle away from where the plastic connector is. Hopefully we don't damage it. So I'm just going to start by just adding a bit of flux to this. Okay, so we'll just add a bit of flux. And then we'll come in with some heat. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up a bit. I noticed I knocked the cap there, but I'm not sure whether I knocked it out of place. I think I might have got away with it. No, to be honest, I can't see anything major on there. It could just have fried itself with the corrosion. But we might try and see if we can reball it and put it back on. It might have just needed a cleaning out underneath. So we'll try and see if we can reball this. Okay, so I've got my soldering iron, a bit of wick, and we're just going to try and absorb all of this up. What I'll start with though is I'll just try and add a bit of leaded solder to this first of all, and then should hopefully make it a bit easier to wick up. There we go. Hopefully that's all of it. We'll just give it a bit of a clean up. Okay, so I think I'm going to try and reball this by hand. I've never done it before, so I'm just testing some ball sizes here, and I've got one here, which looks to be roughly about the right size. I can't be certain, but so what we'll do is add a tiny amount of flux to this. Spread that around. That'll hopefully help it bond and sort of give it something to sort of stick to as well. So I've got some balls here. I'm hoping they're about the right size. They might be too big, I'm not sure, but we'll give this a go either way. So what I need to do is get these balls on here and line them all up. So I'm going to fast forward through this because this is probably going to take me a long time because I've never done it like this before. I've only ever used stencils, but I don't have a stencil for this one. And then once we're all lined up, I'll come back in and we'll see if we can reflow this. We'll call it there. We gave it a go, but I think this might just be a little bit past my skill level right now. So we'll keep practicing and come back to it another time, I suppose. Okay, so that's us continued charging now. I think the next step then is let's just get this together and double check it all properly. So I'll fast forward through this part. Next time you see it, the device will be back together again. Okay, so we're all back together. Just a few last things to do. So I've got a replacement kickstand for the back of this. So we'll just push this into place. I believe just friction fits in. There we go. So new kickstand on there, and that opens up and works as well as the kickstands ever did with these things. So we just need to test a couple of things. So we'll just make sure we still turn on. Yep, we still turn on. Fantastic. Took a little while there, made me a little worried. Okay, we get our Nintendo symbol. Digitizer still works. Let's just test the screen entirely then. So we'll just test the touch screen, and that works perfectly. No dead spots there. So all that's left to test next is the dock, just see whether it comes in. So it flashes, then hopefully we should be able to find this on here. Okay, and there it is. There is the dock. So it docks okay, so we can then remove that. And we're back. Cool. So everything works there. If there's any other problems, we'll jump back into the video here. But if not, that's another fix there. So fairly easy one. Learned a lot about the device there and how the touchscreen everything works. Shame we couldn't reball that card reader, but maybe just need a bit more practice on that. But for now, we get to increase the score to 22. Amazing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.